48 hours before the vote, every major media outlet had already written her political obituary. Takaichi has no chance, they declared. But in a smoke-filled room at 2 a.m., 3 men were panicking, because the numbers they were seeing told a very different story. This can't be right, muttered Sato, the senior party strategist, staring at his laptop screen. Run the simulation again. His assistant's fingers flew across the keyboard. The results came back identical. In a four-way race for party leadership, Sanae Takaichi wasn't just competitive. In certain scenarios, she could actually win. If Kono and Kishida split the moderate vote. The assistant's voice trailed off. She takes it on the second ballot, Sato finished. He lit another cigarette, his third in 20 minutes. We need to make some calls. Now. 3 floors below in her modest hotel room, Sanae Takaichi sat alone, reviewing her speech for the 100th time. No expensive suite for her. No entourage. Just her, a pot of green tea, and a stack of policy papers covered in handwritten notes. Her phone buzzed. A message from her campaign manager. Morning show canceled your interview. Said scheduling conflict. That's the 3rd cancellation this week. She set the phone down without responding. She'd expected this. When you're a conservative woman challenging the old boys club, they don't just oppose you. They try to make you invisible. But Sanae Takaichi had learned long ago. Invisibility can be a weapon. While her rivals held flashy press conferences and gave soundbite-filled interviews, she'd been doing something different. For 3 months, she'd been quietly meeting with every single Diet member who would see her, not in fancy restaurants, in their offices, in coffee shops, sometimes in their own homes. Tell me what you really think, she'd say, not the official line. What keeps you awake at night? And they'd talk. Because there's something about Sanae Takaichi that makes people trust her. Maybe it's the fact that she actually listens, or maybe it's because she never promises what she can't deliver. By the time the leadership race officially began, she had something her rivals didn't. Real relationships. Real conversations. Real commitments. But what happened in the next 6 hours would change everything. Because Sanae Takaichi had a secret weapon that none of her rivals knew about. At 3 a.m., she received an encrypted message on her secure phone. Just 3 words. Package is ready. She allowed herself a small smile. 3 months ago, she'd quietly commissioned a detailed policy analysis from a team of economists at Tokyo University. Not about broad concepts. About specifics. Exact numbers. Real solutions. The package was 247 pages of meticulously researched economic policy. How to reduce Japan's dependence on Chinese manufacturing. How to revitalize rural economies without bankrupting the treasury. How to strengthen defense capabilities while respecting the Constitution. Her rivals had slogans. She had spreadsheets. At 6 a.m., party headquarters began to stir. Campaign teams arrived clutching coffee and strategy memos. The massive conference room on the 5th floor would host the final candidate forum in 12 hours. This was it. The last chance to sway undecided voters. Fumio Kishida's team arrived first, confident and organized. Kishida was the establishment favorite. Former foreign minister. Steady, predictable, safe. Taro Kono's young staffers burst in next, full of energy. Kono was the rock star candidate, social media savvy, popular with youth. The modernizer. When Sanae's small team walked in, just her campaign manager, and 2 policy advisors, a Kono staffer actually laughed. That's it? That's her whole operation? Sanae heard him. She looked up, made direct eye contact, and smiled. The staffer's laugh died in his throat. And then came the phone call that would shake the entire party establishment. At 9 a.m., Sanae's phone rang. The caller ID showed a number she recognized instantly. Taro Aso, former prime minister. Party kingmaker. The man whose endorsement could make or break a campaign. Takaichi-san, Aso's gravelly voice came through. We need to talk in person. 1 hour. She kept her voice steady. Of course, Aso-san. Where? My office. Come alone. She hung up and stared at her phone. This was unexpected. Aso had publicly backed Kishida. Why would he want a secret meeting with her? Her campaign manager looked worried. It could be a trap. They might try to get you to drop out. Or, Sanae said quietly, it could be something else entirely. 50 minutes later, she entered Aso's private office. The legendary politician sat behind a massive desk, a glass of whiskey in front of him despite the early hour. "Sit," he commanded. She sat. "I'll be direct," Aso said. "I've seen the internal polling. The real numbers, not the garbage the media publishes. You're stronger than anyone realizes." Sanae said nothing. "Let him talk. Kishida is weak. Kano is reckless. Noda is irrelevant." He took a sip of whiskey. "You might actually have a shot. But there's a problem." "Which is?" "The faction leaders are planning to unite against you on the second ballot. If you make it that far, they'll coordinate their votes to stop you." There it was. The truth she'd suspected but couldn't prove. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. Aso leaned back. "Because I'm old and I'm tired of mediocre men making mediocre decisions." He paused. "And because Shinzo would have wanted you to win." The mention of Shinzo Abe, her mentor, her friend, hit her like a punch. Abe had died just over a year ago, assassinated. She still felt the loss every day. "What do you want in return?" she asked. "In politics, information always has a price." "Win," Aso said simply. "And when you do, remember who believed in you when nobody else did." What nobody realized yet was that the real battle wasn't happening in conference rooms. It was happening in hundreds of text messages, quiet phone calls, and whispered conversations across Tokyo. Sanae spent the next 4 hours doing something none of her rivals anticipated. She went directly to the young Diet members, the ones the faction leaders ignored, the first-term representatives who'd never been courted by leadership. "They don't care about you," she told them. "You're just vote counts to them. But I'm asking, what do you want? What does your district need?" In Shinjuku, a 35-year-old representative told her about his struggling small businesses. She didn't just nod sympathetically. She pulled out her policy document and showed him specific tax reforms. In Osaka, a female representative broke down crying. "They make jokes about me in meetings. About my clothes." "My voice," Sanae took her hand. "I know. I've heard those jokes for 20 years. But here's what I learned. They joke because they're scared. Every time you speak up, you terrify them." By noon, she'd secured commitments from 17 young representatives. Not faction leaders, not power brokers, just people who were tired of being ignored. Her rivals never saw it coming. "Wait. You need to know what happened 36 hours before the vote. Because this single moment changed everything." The candidate forum began at 6 p.m. Thousands watching in person. Millions more on television. This was the moment that would define the race. Kishida spoke first. Competent. Boring. He talked about stability and experience. The audience applauded politely. Kono went next. Charismatic. Energetic. He promised reform and change. The younger audience members cheered. Then it was Sanae's turn. She walked to the podium. No flashy entrance. No dramatic music. Just her in a simple dark suit carrying a thick binder. "Good evening," she began. "I'm not going to give you slogans. I'm going to give you numbers." And for the next 20 minutes, she did exactly that. Specific policy proposals. Exact budget figures. Real timelines. She cited economic data from memory. She quoted defense white papers. She referenced demographic studies. It was the opposite of every political speech anyone expected. The room went silent, not because it was boring, because it was shocking. Here was a candidate who'd actually done the work. "Japan doesn't need more promises," she said, looking directly at the camera. "Japan needs a leader who knows how to deliver. I've spent 3 months creating a detailed blueprint for our future. Not because I think I have all the answers, but because you deserve a leader who asks the right questions." She paused. "My opponents will tell you I'm too conservative, too traditional, too much of a woman to lead." She let that hang in the air. "But let me ask you something. Why are those bad things?" "I'm conservative because I believe in preserving what makes Japan great. I'm traditional because I respect our heritage. And yes, I'm a woman, because half of Japan is women and it's about time we had a voice at the highest level." The applause started slowly. Then it built. And built. Until the entire room was on its feet. Backstage, Kishida's campaign manager grabbed his phone. "We have a problem." The CCTV footage from that night would later reveal something nobody expected. At 11 p.m., after the forum ended, 3 faction leaders met in a private room at party headquarters. They thought they were alone. They weren't. A young party staffer, one of the 17 Sanae had met with, had been assigned to lock up the building. He heard voices. He turned on his phone's recording app. What he captured would leak to the media 24 hours later. 3 powerful men, plotting to destroy Sanae's campaign by spreading rumors about her mental health and family life. We need to make people uncomfortable with the idea of a woman leading, one said. Use the word unstable, another suggested. Not directly, just plant seeds. The staffer sent the recording to Sanae's campaign manager at 1 a.m. But she didn't lash out. She planned. But the biggest shock was still coming, because at 4 a.m. someone knocked on her hotel room door. She opened it carefully. Standing there was someone she never expected. Seiko Noda, her fellow female candidate, her competitor. "Can I come in?" Noda asked. They sat across from each other, 2 women who'd spent months as rivals. "I'm dropping out," Noda said. "I'm going to endorse you." Sanae was stunned. "Why?" "Because I listened to that recording. And I realized something." Noda's eyes were fierce. "We've been so busy competing with each other that we missed the real fight. It's not you versus me, it's us versus them. The faction leaders will never forgive you," Sanae said quietly. "I don't care." Noda stood up. "I have daughters. I want them to grow up in a Japan where a woman prime minister isn't shocking. It's normal." They shook hands. 2 warriors. 2 pioneers. By 6 a.m., news of Noda's endorsement had spread like wildfire. Social media exploded. Young women across Japan woke up to a new possibility. But the old guard wasn't done fighting. At 8 a.m., just 34 hours before the vote, the largest faction in the party held an emergency meeting. 98 Diet members, all men, all determined to stop Sanae. The faction leader stood up. "We have 2 choices. We let this woman destroy everything we've built, or we stop her now." One young member raised his hand. "With respect, sir, what exactly has she destroyed?" "She's run the most professional campaign I've ever seen." "Don't be naive," the leader snapped. "If she wins, everything changes. The party structure, our influence, everything." "Maybe it should change," another voice called out. The room erupted in argument, and just when everyone thought they knew how this would end, something extraordinary happened. The faction split, right down the middle. 49 members stayed loyal to the old guard. 49 walked out. One of them, a 30-year veteran, stopped at the door. "I've spent my entire career being told to wait my turn, to respect hierarchy, to not make waves." He looked back at the faction leader. "But I just watched a woman work harder, think deeper, and fight smarter than any of us. If that threatens you, that's your problem, not hers." The vote was now too close to call election day. a.m. Sanae woke up in her modest hotel room. No celebration. No premature victory speeches. Just tea and silence. Her phone showed hundreds of messages. Reporters demanding interviews. Supporters sending encouragement. Critics spreading last-minute attacks. She ignored all of it. Instead, she opened her laptop and reviewed her policy document one more time. Because win or lose, she wanted to remember why she'd started this fight. At 10 a.m., voting began. 383 Diet members casting ballots, each one representing years of relationships, promises, and political calculation. Sanae arrived at party headquarters without fanfare. She voted. She bowed to the election officials. She left. "Aren't you going to stay for the count?" a reporter shouted. "I'll hear the results when everyone else does," she said calmly. She spent the next 4 hours walking through Tokyo, alone. Just her and the city she loved, the city she wanted to serve. At 2 p.m., her phone rang. Her campaign manager. "Turn on the TV." She found an electronics store with displays in the window. NHK was broadcasting the results. First ballot results flashed on screen. Kono, 169 votes. Kishida, 110 votes. Takaichi, 114 votes. She'd come in second. She was heading to the runoff. The final vote count would stun the nation. But what happened immediately after would define everything. Second ballot results. Kishida, 257 votes. Takaichi, 170 votes. She'd lost. But not really, because 170 Diet members, nearly half the party, had voted for a woman. For change, for something different. Sanae watched the screen without emotion. She'd known this would be the likely outcome. Kishida would become prime minister. The establishment would celebrate. But she also knew something they didn't. She'd just shattered every ceiling they thought was unbreakable. That evening, she held a press conference. No tears, no complaints. "I want to thank the 170 colleagues who believed in my vision," she said. "We didn't win today, But we proved something important. Japan is ready for change. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But soon. A reporter called out, "Will you run again?" She smiled. That dangerous, determined smile that her opponents had learned to fear. In politics, she said, we don't ask if, we ask when. 1 year later, Epilogue Prime Minister Kishida stood in his office looking at the latest approval ratings. They were falling, fast. His chief of staff entered. "Sir, we have a problem. The conservative wing of the party is threatening rebellion. What do they want?" "They want you to appoint Takaichi to the cabinet." "Economic Security Minister," Kishida sighed. He'd tried to marginalize her after the election, but she'd spent the past year doing exactly what she did before. Working. Building relationships. Creating detailed policy proposals. And now she was too powerful to ignore. "Set up the meeting," he said. 3 days later, Sanae Takaichi became Economic Security Minister. She walked into her new office and looked at the view. Tokyo spread out before her. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Congratulations. First step complete. Seisei Shinzo Abe." But that was impossible. Abe was dead unless, she smiled. Some legacies never die. They just change form. And Sanae Takaichi's journey was just beginning.